Within a Sports Centric, we go over our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Utah Utes, a team that went 10-4 overall in the 2022 season. This team won their second straight Pac-12 title in 2022, and they're going to be looking for their third in 2023. This is a team that has emerged as a true consistent contender the past few years, and whether or not this team wins their third title and maybe even goes further than a Pac-12 title. Could this team go to the college football playoff in 2023? We'll be talking about it here today. We'll be analyzing this team and predicting their schedule game by game in this video. Let's get started with a quick recap of 2022. Once again, the record was 10-4 overall, and this team did have a disappointing loss to start the season. Lost to Florida 29-26, which we kind of knew heading into that matchup going to Gainesville week 1. A tough place to play for a Pac-12 team. We kind of knew that was going to be a potential trap game there, which in the end Utah did lose it, but at least they really followed up that loss with some strong wins. They beat Southern Utah 73-7, beat San Diego State 35-7, dominant win there as well. Beat Arizona State 34-13, beat Oregon State 42-16. Do not forget about that win. Oregon State last season was actually a pretty solid team, and looking back on that October 1st matchup, that was a brutal, dominant, outstanding win, beating the Beavers there 42-16. Came back the next week, lost to UCLA on the road 42-32, but came back and beat USC 43-42, which last season, if there's anything for Utah to be proud of, they shut down USC, and they were USC's kryptonite last season. I mean, the Trojans would have definitely been in the college football playoff if they could have beaten Utah eventually in the Pac-12 title game, but in the end, Utah beat the Trojans 47-24 then in the Pac-12 title game. So obviously that fast forward was just an incredible win there. But they beat Washington State, beat Arizona, beat Stanford down the stretch, lost to Oregon on the road, which really diminished any remaining college football playoff hopes, and then beat the Buffaloes of Colorado on the road to finish out the regular season 63-21. So, and of course, they beat USC in the Pac-12 title, won their second straight conference title, and then took on Penn State in the Rose Bowl. Last year's Ohio State, and this past year it was Penn State. Did lose to Penn State 35-21, so a somewhat disappointing loss to finish out the season, but going to the Rose Bowl for the second straight year after your second straight Pac-12 title, this is a team that is very much, I'd say, the top power in the Pac-12 right now. I mean, you got USC, who is very much emerging right now, but I feel like Utah the past few years has definitely been the top team of the Pac-12. I mean, they've won 2 straight conference titles, and yeah, USC has got higher expectations heading into 2023, but Utah is not a team to sleep on. You look at the returning production for this team, Cam Rising coming back, the starting quarterback who showed tremendous potential heading into 2022, and he definitely had a good year. 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, over 8 picks, a 65% completion rate as well. So, and he also rushed for nearly 500 yards and 6 touchdowns. So he's a dual threat quarterback who definitely brings a lot of potential as we look forward to 2023 still, despite him getting a bit older now. But I mean, and honestly, that's a good thing. He's got as much experience as many quarterbacks that he's going to play here. So Cam Rising coming back is huge. Micah Bernard is also coming back the top in the backfield. You do lose Tavian Thomas, who's been one of the top in the backfield the past few years, but at least Micah Bernard. If you look at it rushing-wise, Tavian Thomas was the lead rusher with nearly 700 yards, and Micah Bernard had just over 500. But in total yards, if you count receiving yards, Micah Bernard was the top of the backfield by about 100 yards over Thomas. You also got your third running back coming back with Jaquindon Jackson, and then also Jalen Glover coming back. So your third and fourth in the backfield also coming back, which this team had a deep backfield last season, multiple players with over 300, 400 yards last season. I mean, if you look at it overall, if you include Cam Rising, this team had 5 players rushing for over 350 yards last season. The receiving core, you do lose Dalton Kincaid, who was headed off to the NFL, so that is a difficult loss. He put up nearly 900 yards last season as a tight end, so a tough loss there, but at least you got Davon Bailey coming back, same with Money Parks, your second and top receivers. You lose 1 on the O-line, you lose 1 on the D-line, 1 linebacker, and then 2 in the secondary. This defense really does not lose too much. This is a team that's got tremendous potential in the returning production. I mean, in last season, that was a big reason why this team was very much considered a potential national contender, was because of that returning production. And even heading into 2023, this team is still returning a lot of talent. This is going to be one of the most experienced teams in the country this upcoming season. So, I mean, this team has got tremendous potential once again. This is a team that could very well make it to the college football playoff, but will they is the real question. This team did slip up a couple of times in 2022. I mean, you look at the Oregon loss, you look at the Florida loss. I mean, both of those, if you could have flipped both those losses, I mean, a one-loss Pac-12 champion in Utah would have been in the college football playoff. This team was not far away from being in the college football playoff last season, especially considering how wide open it was. And so for Utah, this is a team to definitely keep an eye on. Do not sleep on as we look forward to 2023. But now let's look at your transfer portal and recruiting. So Micah Pittman is coming in from Florida State, receiver there to add some depth to the receiving core. You also bring in Logan Fano, edge rusher from BYU. You lose a few players here. Lalani Langi, linebackers in the transfer portal. Same with Matafa, linebackers off to South Florida. You got Miles Battle coming in from Ole Miss, defensive back. Expect him to have an immediate impact. You lose Malone Matele, Jaden Pearson, and then Clayton Isbell as well. Recruiting wise, this team is looking great. 21st in the country, 3rd in the Pac-12. So you got a really good recruiting class coming in. This is a team that is definitely here to stay in the Pac-12 as long as the Pac-12 stays alive, that's for sure. I mean, with a few teams leaving here in the next couple of years. But I do think, I mean, yeah, recruiting wise and everything, this team is definitely, I mean, especially with UCLA, with USC taking off here after this season. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Utah is definitely, as of right now, the top power in the Pac-12. Now, of course, you got Oregon and Washington probably right behind. We'll see if they stick around or not. I mean, the Pac-12 is just in a very uncertain situation right now with the conference realignment. But for Utah, this team, as far as I'm concerned, has definitely got a bright future. Honestly, I could put this team at a 9 out of 10 on the future forecast meter. I've got them at an 8 out of 10. But honestly, it's in between 8 and 9, really. I think this team is here to stay. And I mean, what this team is doing right now, I really like what Whittingham has done with this team. And I mean, this is a team that is, once again, a top power, and it's going to be tough to dethrone this team anytime soon with the depth and the recruiting that is also coming in. But that said, let's take a look at the schedule as we look forward to 2023. So you got Florida in week 1. This is a home matchup this season, which is obviously huge. Once again, I said this even in last year's prediction video. I thought going to Florida, Gainesville, early September, hot, humid climate, what Utah's just not used to. That was just, it had all the makings of a trap game, and Utah did end up losing that matchup. But I really like your odds this season on a Thursday night at home against a Florida team that definitely is has some question marks to it right now. I do think that's a very winnable matchup this season at home. And then Baylor on the road in week 2. This is not an easy start to the season by any means. You got two good Power 5 teams in your first 2 matchups. Baylor on the road in Waco. So if you can start the season 2-0, you'll probably end up starting out 3-0 because you got Weber State the next week. I'd say you're in a really good position heading into your conference schedule, because then you got UCLA there in week 4, Oregon State on the road week 5. Oregon State next season could be a really solid team once again. And that is, that's on a Friday night there, so a huge matchup. Then you got your bye week, and then Cal at home, USC on the road, Oregon at home. So October is a huge month. And then you got Arizona State at home, Washington on the road. That's a big matchup. Arizona on the road, and then Colorado at home to finish out the regular season. So looking at the first month of action here, Florida, I do think you beat the Gators this season. It's much more favorable this year having it at home. Plus Florida, I mean, their quarterback is Graham Mertz, who transferred in from Wisconsin. That offense is probably not going to be too good. Defensively, they could be pretty good. So if you can get past that defense, put up some points, which I think this offense is more than capable to be an outstanding offense this upcoming season. I like your odds there. I think you beat Florida. And then you go on the road to Baylor. This one I think is even more questionable than the Florida game. Going on the road to Baylor, a big matchup. I think this is a really close matchup, definitely a fun one as well. But I'm going to be taking Utah to win this matchup. It's going to be one that could definitely go either way. But I'm going to be taking Utah there to get the win, and then Weber State, easy win. UCLA at home, I do think UCLA falls off a bit. No more DTR, and that's a team that probably is a bit into a rebuild phase as we look forward to 2023. So you start the season 4-0, a really promising start if you can be 4-0 heading into the Oregon State matchup. And this Oregon State game really went back and forth on this one as well. But I've got Utah starting out the season 6-0, which would be an outstanding start. If you are 6-0 heading into the USC matchup, that USC game could easily be a top 5, top 6 matchup, I think. there in late October. So a huge game there, one of the biggest games in the Pac-12 that we have seen in, I'd say, probably years there, if we can see both teams undefeated heading into that matchup. And it is at USC. Caleb Williams, that offense is going to be incredible this season. Defensively, they should be even better. I see USC being a major national contender this season. Wouldn't be surprised, honestly, to see them competing for a national championship. So I'm going to be taking USC there. I do think they edge Utah, but a close game there and a game that could be just a huge matchup for the Pac-12. And then Oregon at home on the 28th. I do think you beat them, which would be a huge win as well. The Ducks, Bo Nix, really like them this season as well. Once again, this is a brutal schedule. I mean, you're playing Washington, which is in November, Oregon, USC, both could be big contenders. Oregon State, don't sleep on them. Your non-conference schedule with Florida and Baylor is not easy. So this is a really difficult schedule. And if you're 7-1 heading into November, I think you're in a really good position. And I do think in November you do lose a game, and that's going to be to Washington on the road. I do think Michael Penix and that offense is going to be, I mean, the Pac-12 is going to have some incredible offenses this season. It's going to be a really strong conference at the top. And honestly, that Washington matchup could definitely go either way, but I'm going to be favoring the Huskies there. And then Arizona and then Colorado to finish out the regular season. I think you beat Arizona, maybe a closer matchup than some might expect. I see Arizona maybe being a fringe bowl team this season. And then Colorado, I think they're going to be kind of a mess in 2023. You take care of them, no problem. So I've got 10-2 for the Utes this season. And for the Pac-12, it is going to be really top-heavy once again. We've seen that the past couple of years where the Pac-12 has had some really solid teams. I mean, last season, there were 6 really good teams in the Pac-12, but no one could make the playoff because it was so top-heavy. You had the teams at the top just eating each other alive, and Utah and USC was a perfect example of that. But, I mean, I still think 10-2 for this team, considering the difficult schedule. That would really be a great record for this team. And honestly, even if you're 11-1, you're probably going to be in the Pac-12 title game in that case. Honestly, even 10-2 might get you there. But if you're an 11-1 team, you win the Pac-12 title, that should honestly get you into the college football playoff, unless something crazy happens with the Big Ten and the SEC. But, I mean, with the strength of this team's schedule, I do think 11-1 in a Pac-12 title would get you in. So even if you do take a loss somewhere in here, you're still in contention. I've personally got 2 losses for Utah, but this is a team with all the potential in the world. I've got 12-0 as the ceiling for this team, 8-4 for the floor. 12-0 and 8-4 I do think are somewhat unlikely. 9-11 wins is definitely where I have this team. I've got them at 10 right in the middle. But I do think, I mean, this team has got all the potential in the world to be an 11-win team. I think USC is probably your most likely loss just because it's on the road. Washington, a very winnable matchup, but same thing with like Oregon State, Oregon. All those are definitely 50-50 games. So if you can just be on the right side of a lot of those close games, you'll be in a really good position. But a really good season coming up here for Utah. I'm looking forward to seeing how this team does. I mean, this is a team with, once again, a tremendous amount of potential. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on Utah, and I appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.